Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Morning Cup. I am so honored today because I have Tyreen Taylor with me. And Tyreen is the owner of Wise Walk Virtual Solutions, a company that specializes in matching companies, business owners, and executives with qualified virtual executive assistants experience. Tyreen comes from a background of working in the federal government and education field. She attended Warner University, a small private Christian university located in Lake Wales, Florida. In addition to owning a business, Tyreen has an uplifting, motivating podcast where she helps listeners take the limits off their thinking. Tyreen is the author of an interactive gratitude workbook that helps readers live a more grateful life. She's a child of God and that lives her life in faith. Thank you so much for being here, Tyreen.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So I would love to just dive into your experience. What was that shift for you going from working in the federal government and education field to owning your own business?
Yes. So I always tell people the same answer. I feel like I was kind of pushed into it or forced into it. I had always done like side businesses throughout my whole life. And when I was in the federal government, I had a medical injury that happened where I had to resign. And when I resigned, I couldn't work for anyone, period, because of the injury. So I had to really think quickly, what can I do, that could be on my own time and I can still, be able to lay down or, whatever I need to do to feel better, and still make some type of income coming in the house. And then that's when I decided to become a virtual assistant. And it really wasn't called virtual assistant when I first started because I had reached out to an old boss to ask if I could do some things that I used to do in person virtually. And this was before COVID. So people didn't really know, like, can you really really do work at home other than, you have telework days and things like that. So thankfully he said yes. And I did that for a while and realized it was awesome. I loved it. And then it started to grow from there, but I couldn't take on too many clients because I just couldn't work a lot of hours and I didn't want to be capped either. So the great idea came to start a team. And then that is how this business was created. I started with VA at the time, and I matched her. Then I did it the second time and the third. And I always tell people when I did it the third time, I knew, okay, I think this is real. I think this is a real, real business. And that's kind of how everything started.
Oh, I love that. It's like you're the matchmaker.
Yeah, that's my title on LinkedIn. I call myself the EA matchmaker.
I love it because it's true. A lot of people really didn't understand the benefits of working from home prior to COVID because they weren't forced to do it or had to. But I think being able to really open up other people's eyes, but being able to match people. So I know you said you started with one, then two, then three, and then just kind of took off. What was that process like when you started getting started? Did they come to you? Did you find them? What was that like?
So the clients would come to me, because they heard about the services that I was providing, but I'm like, hey, I can't do it. I can't do, more hours than what I physically can do, because of the situation. Then I said, but I have someone else that is really awesome and I think it will be good. So back then I didn't have, a group of VAs to pick from. It was just one that I'm like, just try this. Let's see if it works. So I didn't really have what I have now where I can give people different profiles and say, hey, I think these people are good for you and your company. So luckily the first person that I matched was just really flexible and they just really needed the help and it ended up working. So every match that I've done, I just learned something new from that, from that matching. So I know now, oh, okay, do things differently or go this way. So yeah, it's really awesome.
I love that. And I'm glad, it's so interesting because as an entrepreneur, we're constantly pivoting or figuring out a way around things. But I'm curious because I know you said you had a lot of side hustles throughout the years. What was that like? What were some of those that you did in the past?
Yeah, sure. So my background is education, and I love kids. So even when I was in high school, I was working, and I think it was after high school too. Yeah, it was after high school, but I was working a full-time job. Then I was also a nanny. So I would do that. And then I created a weekend childcare business where I would watch kids on the weekends and, take them to different places to play. So those were like the main, kind of side hustles that I did years ago.
Oh, I love that. And it starts with like when you're younger, you like have this itch for it or spirit. Not everyone has it, or maybe you don't know and it comes in a different form, but it just kind of went from when you really needed to figure something out quick. And that's where your service came into play as well, because you were quick on your feet. You're like, I
Yes.
want to do this. I want to help people, but I also need to work from home.
Yes, exactly. You are so right. Yes.
So I'm curious because I know you have a podcast. So I would
Mhm.
love for you to touch on that a little bit and where that came about.
Sure. So I know I have, well, at least I think, I have like good messages to tell people. And I think I started it like 2 years ago. This was like when I was going through everything, and I was thinking about doing a YouTube, but then I kind of shied away from it because I'm like, oh, you got to make sure your hair looks nice. You got to make sure you have a nice shirt. And I'm like, that's too much, and then you have to
I
like,
get it.
and I'm like, okay. And then that's when I think podcasts were like really coming out. And that was like a trending thing going on when I first started it. And I was like, okay. So I just started. I didn't really have a plan. I'm just like, I would just let topics come to me. I don't even think I had like a posting schedule when I first started. It was just when an idea comes, it comes. And that's really what I still do, but I do try to post once a week. Every Monday is always the goal. Sometimes it doesn't happen because I don't force the topics, and sometimes people will DM us and ask us, talk about certain topics, and we will, but I do it by myself. I do want to start having guests, but like right now it's just me. So when the topics come, I just hurry up and, turn the computer on and record really quickly. And that's really it. It just kind of flows. But the whole goal with it, like my overall goal of life period, is just to help as many people as I can in whatever I'm doing. So like even with the business, matching these executives, like helping them feel stress-free, and it's not always 100%, I can't guarantee you that, but just being able to go home for dinner because your EA is taking care of stuff. And then to be able to give someone a job and they can work from home and set their own hours, it's just, I just love helping people. And again, that's what the podcast is about. It's just to really help people just see a different perspective and to help them take the limits off of their thinking. So.
Yes, absolutely. You touched on really two important things. I'll start with like just having the VA as well, like being able to have the service that you provide for these executives, like that peace of mind where the job's going to get done. You can have more time with your family, your friends, just for yourself, which is most important too. So you can give to others. But I love that you highlighted that. And with the podcast too, I think it's great that you're able to just really touch into the messages that come through to you, or topics that people are asking for you to do, but also what you're receiving as well. And I think that's beautiful because sometimes topics just come and that message might be so imperative for that one person or the 100 people that are going to hear it or more. And I think that's just the beautiful thing about podcasts. And you're right, YouTube, you have to get a little bit dressed up, a little together, maybe not always.
Yes.
It's a little more work in that regard, but I think too, it's the messaging, right? And I think that's the beautiful thing. And that's why I love YouTube, but even podcasts, because you can be walking and just listening to somebody's message that really just hits home, or you might have not even been thinking about something, but it triggers a thought and you're like, wow, I didn't even think of that. And that's why I love, like, especially what you embody and just the little I've heard from your podcast is it kind of dug a little in there. Of course, it's all about supporting one another, I believe. But I think that's great that you are able to have something that's so motivating and uplifting for others to hear. And you're right, it's so beautiful that you can just press a button, record, and you're done.
Yes.
After you've done it.
Yes.
And how long have you been doing your podcast for?
It's been I want to say almost 3 years. Yeah, because I took a long break for a while. And then I came back, I think February of this year, and I'm on season 3. So it's been about 3 years. Yep.
That's incredible. And so for a lot of people listening, maybe they want to start a podcast. What was that process like for you to start?
So Google and YouTube literally showed me everything. I didn't know anyone at the time who had a podcast. So I just did a Google search, and I highly recommend Anchor because you literally record on Anchor and you can send it to all of the, popular platforms like Apple Podcasts and what's the other one, like Android, and it just pops on there. So it's like, a lot of people are like intimidated, but I'm like, it's so easy. You record, you click a few buttons, you can edit it, you can add music if you want to get fancy. I'm not fancy. I add my intro, I add the message, and then I just send it off. But it's honestly probably maybe like a 5-step process. And of course, you can get your mic if you want to just, upgrade your equipment. But if you want to start with your phone, and put your headphones in and record like that, you literally can start today.
Super simple. And yes, YouTube and Google are like our best friends when it comes to starting something new. Just ask. So I'm curious too, going back to starting your business, because a lot of people are like, well, I want to start a business, but like, how do I start a business? And a lot of it's word of mouth from what you were saying too, like clients were coming to you. But what was that like process of setting up your business?
Sure. So I'm big on mentors. So I always highly, highly recommend anybody, if you're starting anything new, not just a business, but try to find a mentor in your field, or even if it's not your particular industry or field, just someone who has a business, and try to learn from them. But once again, Google, you search like, how do you start a business? And one of the first things is you get your LLC or whatever type of corporation that, you want to do. It may be a nonprofit, it may be like a corporation or things like that. So I really wouldn't even say that's the first step, because some people would say the first step would be like, create your plan and see, what are you even going to do? But yeah, Google and getting a mentor and getting that corporation filed, I think would be some of the first steps to start.
And was your first step getting a mentor? I'm curious.
Yes. Yep. Yes. I've had awesome mentors. I have a lot more now, so I'm like super grateful. But yeah, even before I had a business, I just had a mentor, just period.
Yeah, no, mentors are the best because it's somebody who's already been there through what you're maybe about to go through and can lead you the way versus trying to figure it out on your own. Because I don't know if you agree with this, but with entrepreneurship, it is a very lonely journey, but that's why it's so important to surround yourself with amazing mentors and like-minded individuals to help you through that roller coaster of emotions when you start a business.
Yeah, no, I actually 100% agree with you. And then going back to the virtual solutions company, that's another thing that we, I won't say sell, but that's another thing that we offer, which is we help with that, like especially what I notice with our female clients, they look more to their EA as more than just, hey, let's knock out these tasks, but more of a thought partner, because it is lonely, but when you have that dedicated EA where, he or she is in your inbox, they're doing your calendar, they probably, I don't know how, but read your text messages, it's like they're so in your life, you start to build a really good relationship with them. So those days when you do feel lonely, not saying you go to your EA and say, hey, I'm lonely, but you may be having an issue or you're trying to work through something, and sometimes just talking things out is literally the difference. And then your other person, the outside perspective, gives you one idea and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't think of this. I've been dealing with this issue for a week and you just gave me the answer. And it's, sometimes it's right in front of us, but we're so in the problem, we can't see. So I agree completely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what came up for me was just that like voice of reason, because you're
Mhm,
outside of the situation, you can see it more clearly than if you're like in the thick of it. And that's the beautiful
mhm.
thing of having that person like there to help you not just manage your calendar, but it's almost like a lot of times what I've heard from others, it's that person becomes sort of like family in a way
Mhm,
because you are so close to. I love
mhm.
that. Well, I'm glad that is available to people too, just having that service because I think it's very important. I know it's important for me too.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get into the interactive gratitude workbook that you
Mhm.
created because I know you're an author. So if you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I created that during the pandemic because I noticed what was happening, which was um, a lot of people started to really experience a lot of, depression and just sadness, even before the depression. And it was because of what we were going through in that moment.
Mhm.
And I started to learn gratitude during that time. And I realized what it did to me mentally because it was rough, not being able to leave your home and things like that. And then when I learned like what is gratitude and how do you practice it and how do you help it make your day better, it's like, whoa, like wow, you sit down and you write 3 or 4 things that you're grateful for. Like I always tell people, I don't know, you probably know, Doc, but the scientific reasoning behind it, I don't know what it does, but it like does something to you when you sit instead of pondering on the bad, you actually sit and you're like, wow, I'm so grateful for this. Then when you say it out loud, it just does something else. And that's when I'm like, okay. And then I was teaching I think she was 4 at the time, my 4-year-old gratitude because she was getting frustrated that we couldn't leave the house. And then randomly one day she's like, you should tell people about, how they can be happy or something, she said. And then she's like, you should write a book. And I'm like, like 4-year-old, you're telling me this? So I
Yeah.
definitely took the challenge and I'm like, okay, let me figure out, how to write the book. And it worked.
Oh my gosh, sometimes kids are just so bright.
Yes,
You never know. They just don't
yes,
have that filter and they can just say what's on their mind. I'm so glad
exactly.
your 4-year-old did say something to
Yes,
you.
yes,
Because I
completely.
know it's with gratitude, I can definitely attest when we say something we're grateful for, it's hard to have like a negative thought in that same
Mhm,
sentence or same breath or even just thought process. And I
mhm,
love that you were able to take what you were practicing and for your 4-year-old to also acknowledge that because it just shows
mhm.
how bright they are too, of
Yes.
saying, hey, like other people can experience this, other people can feel good too. You
Mhm,
like don't have to get stuck in this place. It's okay to feel all the feelings, absolutely,
mhm.
because every feeling is valid, as I always say. But I think
Exactly.
it's really important when we practice gratitude. It's
Mhm,
something that like it's a hit or a miss for me. I used to be really, really consistent about it. And I gotta get
mhm.
you're reminding me right now.
Yes.
But I would say it out loud in the mirror, like when I was driving or getting ready in the morning, just 3 different things I'm grateful for out loud.
Yes.
And just it does wire our brains differently, as you were saying as well. And I'm curious, your process for creating that, because it's a workbook, it's interactive. Do
Mhm.
you have like, can you tell us a little bit more about that too, if you don't mind?
Sure. So it is a 22 gratitude challenge.
Mm,
So each day there is a tip and a quote, and then there are lines for you to actually write in. I think it's 3 or 4 things that you're grateful for. And then you just read the tip and then you read the quote. And then, like, that's your first day. Well, that's how every day is. And you do that for 22 days. And then it's been
mm,
proven when you do that, you automatically are going to be more positive. Like your mindset is going to have a shift, and then you may have to come back to it in a few months, to just read through. But I always tell people when you do the challenge and you have those down days, go back to your gratitude book and read. Just pick a day. Just,
yeah.
open a book, whatever page it falls on, read that. And you're like, oh man. And I'm not saying it's a magic wand where you're going to automatically shift your thinking, but it'll help.
Mhm.
So yeah, that is how it works.
Love it. Thank you for explaining that. Because I do
Sure.
think too, it really does take just that little practice. It's even like with other practices and tools like meditating or breathing. Like if you
Mhm,
do it once, it's not going to just magically change everything, but it
mhm,
aids in that. It builds like a solid foundation because it's building that muscle that might have
mhm.
not been used before. And I love how you put it too. So I'm curious, with everything that you've experienced in your journey, what has been some of the ups and downs that you've experienced while building your business?
Oh man, it's so much,
Just some.
it's a lot. I think one of the biggest things for me is because I still suffer from the injury when I had to resign. So it is dealing with those days or times where I'm kind of just all the way out, like I can't do anything for my business because of, the pain that I'm going through. So those days are like super, super, super tough. But on more like on the business side, I think in the beginning, it was just figuring out my messaging, because it's like, when you enjoy something, it's hard to like put it into words. Like when I'm talking to someone, I can easily explain, oh, what we do and how we do it, but it was hard to, get that into templates and things like that. So that was definitely a hard part. Some of the highlights are just meeting a lot of different people. Like I did a consultation last week with someone who lived in Canada. And I just thought that that was like so cool, because I'm like, wow, like you live in Canada and you're talking to me. I'm in, the East Coast and things like that. So I think just seeing where the world, like where you can go because you're virtual, like it's really awesome.
Yes, no, it's definitely amazing being able to meet really cool people that are not in the same environment as you or close by, but just all walks of life from all over the world. And that's a beautiful thing, I think, too, about being virtual in any capacity. And so with everything that you have experienced, you have like at least 2 to 3 different tips that you can give individuals that are starting their business, that they're on this journey, that would be really helpful.
Yeah. Like before you start your business, I think you need to know, I think a lot of people say this, but you need to know your why. And it shouldn't be, because you're trying to be a millionaire, because that's not going to help you fight through those tough, tough days. Like it has to be a core reason, that you feel strongly about. That's one. And then two is, like I said earlier, but reach out to others, like find a support group, support system, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a friend, whether you go into like these Facebook groups and like meet a genuine person that is your accountability partner. That is huge. And the third I would say is always be researching. So like always look to see how you can improve the way you're doing things. Like how can you make whatever you're doing an easier process or different things like that. So those would be my top 3.
I love those. And, this isn't really mentioned a lot, but the accountability partner, I really appreciate you bringing that into the conversation, because I do think when you have somebody who's holding you accountable, even if it's a coach or just that other business like-minded person as well, but being able to hold that accountability, but also not pushing each other and motivating each other to get to that next step. And because like we were talking about, you're building your business, but having somebody in your corner outside of a mentor, but somebody who's in that almost same position as you, it's like that, oh, okay, you get it, or let's talk this through, let's brainstorm. That can really be so beneficial. I know that's been really beneficial for me, so that's why I had to like also highlight that, and the research piece too. Not everyone talks about that, and I think that's important too, because it's like constantly thinking what's next, but being a couple steps ahead. But I think too, it's just start expanding our knowledge and not staying stagnant, because I think like I'm a life learner. Like I went to school for a long time, but I am always learning and always wanting to know a little bit more, or just being able to dive into that. So I think those were all 3 amazing. So thank you for sharing all of those.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. So with that being said, before we get into the rapid fire questions, what has been maybe a big aha moment in your journey where you're like, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, if you have one?
So I think it's when I do my check-ins with our clients and just hearing their feedback of, wow, like my EA is great. Like she's lifted so much off my shoulders. Like I can do this now, or I've scaled my business to this because I have his or her help. Like that definitely is like, woo, or them saying, wow, like we're really getting along well. I think you really gave me a good match. Like those are, excuse me, those are like the two things that like really remind me like, hey, you are doing, you're doing pretty well.
No, I love that. And I do think too, it's just being able to really soak in those moments because the journey is up and down sometimes, but when you really see the fruits of your labor and being able to match the right people, the right VAs as well, and being able to see them thrive in their atmospheres as well.
Yes.
And I just thought of one more question.
Sure.
Because I know you're a mom. What's that been like with motherhood and entrepreneurship and balancing those two or integrating those two?
So it's rough, because as moms, we want to give our kids our time, but it's like you really have to balance because you have to balance between the business, the kids, the spouse, and yourself, so it's like you can't forget yourself. So for a while, it was just business, business, business until I realized like, hey, like the kids are only going to be this age one time. Like you still have to, dedicate time because it was like, you'll be sitting on the couch and just having a nice time. They could be watching their show, but you're doing something work-wise, So one thing, if I had to give a tip, it would just be to be present in everything that you do. So even when you are working, be present and work. It's hard to say, but you should be focusing on what you're doing, with the kids when you get off. And when you're with the kids, don't think about that meeting you have in 2 hours. And it's so hard. Like it takes so much practice and I'm still trying to get it. But that has really helped me. Is just to actually be present in those moments. And then I feel like time started to go slower in a good way because I was in the present. So I wasn't thinking like, oh man, I gotta hurry and do this or do that. So yeah.
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right too. It's like I think anybody can relate to that, being present and enjoying those small moments that you do have. And I appreciate your transparency too, of just being real and being human and knowing that it's not always perfect. It's almost never perfect, if I'm being honest.
Yes.
But I think too, it's just, I appreciate you being very transparent about that as well, because I'm not a mom yet, but I do know so mmany moms and they pour themselves into their families and everyone they love, and just reminding them too, that putting themselves first, they have more for everyone else too. And I'm glad you brought that up. Awesome. Well, I've been having so much fun with you. It's been such a great conversation. But we're going to dive into the rapid fire questions if you're ready for them.
Yes, I am.
All right. Who is your hero?
So it's probably cliche, but I would definitely say my mom, because like moms are just heroes, period. Like we just have to deal with so many different things. But I would say she's definitely my hero because she always comes through. And it's like sometimes you don't even know how she made something happen, but it happened. And that's been like throughout my whole life, even into adulthood. And she does the same thing for my kids, so definitely my mom.
Moms are the best. They truly are. I know I love my mom. What motivates you to work smarter?
Definitely the other question we just talked about, which is how do you balance it all? Because you have to work smarter so you don't work harder and you don't take so much time. So just knowing that I have more things to do than just one thing definitely motivates me to make sure my systems are in place. Like if I can have an email that is automated versus me sit and actually do it, I'm going to go that route. So, yeah.
That is very smart. So if you were a superhero, I mean, you are a mom, so you are already a superhero, but if you had a power or powers, what would they be?
So that's a hard one, but I think I would want to fly because I enjoy traveling, and especially with the flight prices right now and are just insane, So I think I probably would like to fly because one of my goals is to travel around the world. So I would want to fly.
That is a good one. So I have to ask because I'm curious because a lot of people say flying, but do you want to like see everything or would it be more like teleporting where you just like press a button and you're there? Or
You're right. It probably would be teleporting because I really don't want to actually feel myself flying or
okay.
see everything.
Yeah.
You're right. I would definitely just hit a button and I'm in Hawaii for 2 days, something like that. And I come straight back, no long 14-hour flight. So definitely.
Okay, I had to ask because some people like the wind in their hair and all that. It's
No.
beautiful to see things, but I mean, I'm with you on the teleporting. I just want to be there.
Yes.
I can appreciate beauty, but
Yes.
I'll appreciate it on the ground. I'm afraid of heights. But with that being said, what is the phone app that you use the most?
Oh, it's a tie between the text messaging app and the calendar app because I always tell people if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist. So I'm literally always in there just seeing like, okay, where are we at with things? What's next and things like that. So, and then of course, I guess probably the calendar will win because I don't really text that much, because I'm like doing different things. So I would say the calendar app.
Calendar app. It's a good one. Keeps you organized. Pretty important. Pretty
Yes.
important, especially when you're running a business.
Yes.
And everything else you do.
Exactly, right?
So if you have a day off, you're not helping any of your clients or anyone that you're working with, what do you like to do? What's your favorite way to spend the day off?
Honestly, just chill, like get on the couch, watch some Netflix, eat some snacks, like don't have a deadline or a due date or have to be somewhere and I can have on super loose loungy clothes and just chill. That would be it.
Oh, that sounds perfect.
Yes.
Very relaxing afternoon or day. So what is something an outsider wouldn't know about your industry?
A couple things, honestly. So some people don't know that you can have a virtual executive assistant. Like some people are so used to you have to have someone that sits at a desk in your office. Another thing would be that we offer really small packages. Like the smallest package you can get is an hour a day. And it's very affordable. So some people think, oh, VA, EA is going to be too expensive. I can't afford it right now. But we offer those different packages to be able to service everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. See, so many things I learn every day. It is available, everyone. But before I let you go, my final question is where can people find you, hire you, use your services?
Sure. So my favorite social media platform right now is LinkedIn. Love it, love it. So they can definitely find me on LinkedIn. You can just search my name, Tyreen Taylor. I should pop up. And definitely send me a message and let me know you found me from this channel. And as far as hiring, they can go on our website and then schedule a consultation, and then we can get the ball rolling.
Perfect. Well, Tyreen, thank you so much for taking the time today to share your journey with us, all the ups, downs, and everything you're up to, which is incredible. But we appreciate you being on here today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe below. What was the best thing that you got from Tyreen today? Something you might have learned as well. We would love to hear it. I'm sure she would as well. Thank you again, and we'll see you on the next video.